How we doing, YouTube? My name is Ryan. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. Tonight we are continuing our journey through all the MCU films with the third entry, that being Iron Man 2. I know usually not a fan favorite film in the MCU, and actually it isn't one of my favorite MCU films either. I definitely enjoy elements of the film, but I think overall, I've only seen the film a couple times, and both times I watched it, it was kind of messy and not overall an enjoyable watch for me. But this is what we're popping in the player tonight. So, gonna watch the film, then of course give my review after. We'll see if my opinion changes, if this film goes up or down in my mind, see if any good messages or anything stands out to me. If so, we'll definitely talk about it. So yeah, I guess I'll see y'all in a second. So, I just finished Iron Man 2, so let's talk about it. Spoiler alert, by the way. So, I actually pretty decently enjoyed this most recent watch of Iron Man 2. I don't know why I didn't like it that much the first couple times I watched it. Now, granted, it's been at least a couple years since I last watched this film, so maybe I don't know, maybe I just understand it a lot more now, or maybe because we've gotten, you know, so many just average MCU films recently. I don't know, but I just really connected and felt for Tony this time around and his situation. His arc reactor is flooding his body with toxic substances or something like that, but anyway, he's dying and he just starts kind of going back to his old ways and living a very kind of reckless and hedonistic lifestyle, just kind of doing whatever he wants because he's like, I'm gonna die soon. Can't find a cure. So I guess Tony really doesn't see the point of being selfless and just becomes very selfish again. And previously, that's one of the reasons I didn't really like this film, is because Tony is very unlikable in the first half of this film. He's being very selfish and kind of like how he seemed and acted before the cave in he went into the cave in the first film. But I guess I just understand that that's part of the story now, I guess. Like, I'm really trying to figure out why I didn't previously enjoy this film too much, because I actually pretty decently enjoyed this film this time around. I don't know why. But Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Tony Stark, once again, amazing. Kills it in every MCU film he's in. Gwyneth Paltrow's Pepper Potts, and then we have Don Cheadle taking over for Terrence Howard as Rhodey from this point onward in the MCU. Really enjoyed his character in this film. I love how at the party scene when Tony's drunk and just acting like, I'll say goof, I love how Rhodey puts on one of Tony's prototype suits, which eventually becomes the War Machine armor, and we see him in a suit for the first time, and he tells everyone to go, and he has that fight with Tony and tries to knock some sense into him, and I just thought in that scene, that's a really good friend to have, you know, a friend who will tell you when you're being an idiot, who will knock some sense into you, try and, you know, give you the truth even if it's hard, who is there for you even when you're acting stupid, even in the tough times, who doesn't abandon you. And Rhodey even says, right before that scene, you know, he comes down and sees Tony's, you know, not doing very well. He sees the veins on his neck or whatever that is that's caused by whatever's going on with the arc reactor, and he says, you don't have to do this alone, you know. And then I don't remember exactly what Tony says, but I think he says something like, I think I do. And that really reminded me of how we are made for fellowship and friendship with each other. We can't do this life alone. First and foremost, we need God, and then second most, we need each other. We need family and friends. And friends like Rhodey, who are going to tell us the truth, even when it's hard, who are going to be there for us, even when we're going through a tough time, when we're acting stupid, when we won't tell them what's going on, and that's what Tony does in this film. He won't tell anyone what the heck is going on with him. I'm not exactly sure why he doesn't try to get his friends involved. I guess maybe he thinks that they can't help because he hasn't found a cure for himself, I guess. I'm not exactly sure why he doesn't enlist their help. But Rhodey is just such a good friend to Tony, and he's there for him, and that's what we should be doing, as Paul writes in Galatians 6, chapter 6, verse 2, I believe it is. We are to bear each other's burdens, help each other through those hard times. Now, granted, we do have to admit when we are going through hard times. So I guess another good message to take away from this film is what Tony does maybe do not do. Tell people you trust who are going to be there for you what's going on. Get their help. You cannot do this life alone. We are not made to be solitary beings who just spend all our time alone. I also really love the introduction of Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, or Natasha Romanoff, in this film. I especially loved her, the scene at the end during the final fight when she's trying to track down Whiplash, where he is, trying to find where he is, and she takes down all those security guards, I guess they are. That was really cool. I really enjoyed Black Widow and her introduction in this film. And Samuel L. Jackson, once again, kills it as Nick Fury. I just love him in this film, talking to Tony and telling him about his dad and that Tony's acting crazy and that his dad loved him. And I love that talk he has with Tony where Tony's like, my dad was cold and you apparently knew my father better than I did because he never told me he loved me or anything like that. And Nick Fury tells him everything your father did was for you, and he was a founding member of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I love how Tony sees that old tape of his dad and he finds a message from his dad that he's never seen before, and his father, Howard Stark, is telling him that Tony is his greatest creation, and that leads to Tony kind of discovering that new element that he uses. I don't think they named the element, which was kind of weird to me. That kind of felt off. But he discovers a new element that he uses for his arc reactor to power it, that keeps him alive, that saves him. So I thought that was a really nice scene. I really enjoyed that. And also really enjoyed when he takes that blueprint of that, I think, the Stark Expo that Howard made, and he makes a digital copy of it, and, you know, he's, like, moving things around and changing it. You know, how he makes a digital copy and, like, puts it in the air. I'm really describing this terribly, but hopefully y'all know what I'm talking about, where he's like moving things around and he's discovering the new element. I think those kind of scenes are very visually pleasing and interesting to watch. And another thing about the relationship between Tony and his dad is Tony felt his dad was cold and he never said that he loved him. His father kind of seemed like a workaholic, and although we do see in that scene that Howard Stark loved his son and everything he did was for him, I think he's also an example of some things maybe not to do as a father, and it just kind of got me thinking. For those of you that don't know, I produce a Christian podcast called Further Every Day. We are pretty much everywhere you can listen to podcasts. We are also on YouTube. I will leave the link to that channel down below. If you want to go check it out, please do. We would love the support and appreciation over there. But one of the things we talk about a decent amount on that podcast, the podcast, by the way, is about, we do a lot of apologetics. We talk about current events through the lens of the Christian worldview and how we as Christians should respond. But one thing we talk about a lot is the fatherlessness in America. You know, there are a lot of absentee fathers in this world. Through doing that podcast, I've just really seen and heard a lot of stories about absentee parents and the effects it has on kids. And it's just so sad to hear about. And I've seen the negative effects absentee and unloving parents. I see the effect that has on their kids. I've realized how important the role of parents, especially fathers, is for children, because a father is supposed to be a reflection of our Heavenly Father, of God, and without that picture, without that reflection of God, a children's view of God can be really distorted. Fathers need to spend a decent amount of quality time with their children, and understand that fathers also need to provide for their children and for their spouses, and sometimes they may have to work a lot, and they may have a job that requires them to work a lot. And I'm not saying that's bad, I understand that, but also fathers need to make an effort to spend time, quality time, with their children and their spouses, and to show affection to their children and be that good reflection of God. And it's unfortunate that Howard Stark wasn't that for Tony, but like I said, this is a nice scene. I understand why Howard Stark was doing what he was doing, but he still could have been a better father, and you gotta constantly tell your children that you love them. And that's the kind of father I want to be. I want to make sure I am involved in my kids' lives and showing them, being that good reflection of their Heavenly Father. I do want my children to know God, so I do want to make sure I am making as hard of an effort as I can to spend time with them and with my wife, being that good reflection of God, teaching them the right things, telling them, showing them that I love them. So that's one thing this movie reminded me of. The whole thing with Tony and his father was kind of an example of you can't spend all your time working. I think spending that quality time with your family and showing them that you love them is very important in building your kids up to be great, godly adults. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is the villains in this film. Sam Rockwell, cast as Justin Hammer, I thought he was a overall fun character and a decent villain. He was kind of cringe at points, but overall, I enjoyed his character. I like Sam Rockwell and things, usually. And then we also have Mickey Rourke, who is probably more so the main villain as not Anton, Ivan Vanko, aka Whiplash. Very famous Iron Man villain. I thought the final fight with him at the end was cool. Really enjoyed seeing his electric whips and the fights with Iron Man. The suit-up scene at the racetrack is really cool. So they were fine villains, nothing too compelling or relatable, but they were enjoyable. I liked them overall. There's a couple conveniences I noticed in the film, like when Rhodey puts on the prototype suit to, you know, have that fight with Tony. Like, at the end, he just flies away, like, he knows how to use the suit pretty well, and I'm like, isn't this his first time in the suit? Like, when Iron Man was making the suit and learning how to fly, he really struggled and crashed a bunch, but Rhodey, like, seems like he's a pro at this, but this is his first time using a suit, am I wrong? And there were just a couple more instances like that throughout the film that just had me going, wait, how does that make sense? Or how does this work? Or why doesn't this work like that? Wouldn't it work like this? Oh, and also, before I wrap this thing up, one thing you gotta talk about is the post-credits scene here. Oh my gosh, I know we are 36 movies into the MCU, and we've seen a lot from this character, but the Thor tease at the end in the post-credit scene, I know you just see the hammer, but it still gives me goosebumps. It's still so exciting to see for me. So just had to mention that before we wrap up this review. I think overall I'd give this a 7 out of 10. I think it's just a good movie. And with that, I think I'm gonna wrap up this review, so thank y'all for watching, hope y'all enjoyed. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy my content, and with that, I will see y'all in the next video. Y'all have a wonderful night.